cow tie.
Hey folks, Randy Newberg here. I hope you're doing great. We are plowing through all these state-by-state application videos, and we're about to do the one that I think is the easiest of them all, New Mexico. Why is New Mexico so easy? They don't have a point system. Woo! New Mexico, kudos to you. I might have some other editorial of things I wish were different, but you don't have a point system. Very easy to understand. Don't got to worry about a whole lot of headache here. We're going to do this video, and it's going to go pretty fast, I think. Like all of our videos, the goal of this is for you to draw an elk tag, or whatever tag you want, in 2024. We want you to have the information so that you can compete with all these people who hire consultants, who use application services. And that's not a knock against those groups. They are really smart people who know what they're doing. They live and breathe this stuff. But we think that you should be able to be your own consultant with at least the basics of what we give you, plus the tools that Go Hunt has. You should be ready to go. So if you want to sign up for Go Hunt and get way more than what's in this video, go there and use promo code RANDY, and they'll put $50 of credit in the gear shop. March 20th, 2024, 5 o'clock Mountain Time is your deadline. You don't get any mulligans with New Mexico. Their system doesn't crash like a lot of the other states do, so you're not going to get an extension. So be ready. The other good part about New Mexico, besides not having a point system, their results are out by April 24th this year. They promise. April 24th will be the result, the date that they publish the results. And here's why that's good. Now that Nevada, Wyoming deer and pronghorn, Utah, a lot of Idaho deer and elk and antelope, a lot of this stuff gets pushed into May. So you're going to find out about New Mexico before those deadlines come. So when we did those videos earlier about how to get the most value and budgets and upfront costs and sunk costs and total outlay of costs, New Mexico having this earlier date, especially the earlier date of announcing, gives you more options. Like I said, no point system. Going through all these pieces, like these highlights in New Mexico here, and there's not too many of them. The people say, well, without a point system, how can Go Hunt do draw odds when they give you 3 choices before they go on to the next person? Well, there's what's called the Monte Carlo simulation, and if you run that a couple million times based on last year's draw data, at least you get a pretty good idea of where the likelihoods were last year. But that's last year's data. That's not predictive, but it's very helpful. So how does New Mexico do this? New Mexico takes 84% of every hunt code, the tags of every hunt code, goes to their residents, which most states it's 90-10. New Mexico, they only get 84 as residents. Then they take another 10% that goes to anyone using an outfitter. Well, some of you are doing the math and said, well, Randy, that's 94%. That doesn't leave much for the non-outfitted non-resident. You're correct. We as non-outfitted non-residents, the self-guided non-residents, only get 6% of the tags. Ugh, dang it. That's a pretty small number, and it impacts things, and I'm going to get into why that impacts things more than maybe you're thinking. Upfront costs, you're going to pay a $65 license. You're going to pay a $14. There's a couple stamps that total $14, so that's $79. And then you're going to do an application fee. I think it's $13, I think. So you're out maybe, $80, $90. Here's the thing about New Mexico is it can eat a lot of your budget because you have to front all of the costs. So if you're going to front the money for an elk tag, that's $773 plus this license and other stuff I talked about. If you're going to say, well, I already bought the license, I may as well do deer, that's another $368. Well, I already bought the license, may as well throw my hat in the ring for antelope, that's another $283. All that is getting paid on your credit card. And you're not, even though the results come out in late April, it's going to be sometime in late May before you get that money refunded back on your credit card. So you got to be doing a little planning of your budget. That's big to me. CPAs, we worry about budgets and cash flow and all that stuff. So, and if you really want to get out there, you can apply for Rocky Mountain Bighorn or Desert Bighorn, but you're fronting an additional $3,173. I don't even bother. The odds are so minuscule. I'm not fronting that amount of money because that's going to take away from my chance to apply in some other state for some other species. So, other people can fight over those two. And then in New Mexico, they have exotics, oryx, ibex, and Aoudad sheep. Oryx and ibex, you're going to front $1,623 for each of those. Aoudad, $373. So, every species in New Mexico is under this same system. So it's not like Wyoming has a different system for deer and elk that they do for, or for deer and pronghorn like they do for elk, and a different system for moose and goat and sheep. Everything's the same system, same draw, all happens at one time. That makes it pretty simple in New Mexico. Now, I want to get to those 3 choices they talk about, right? If you want to use a strategy to maybe get that unbelievable tag, even just, boy, I'd like to go hunt there, make that your first choice. And if you're like me and say, well, I'm old and gray, man, I'm not going to swing for the fences all the time. I just want to go hunting. I don't know how many years I got left. Well, make something a little more moderate, a little easier to draw as your second choice. And if you just want to hunt New Mexico, every 3 or 4 years, make the easiest hunt of whatever species it is, make that your third choice. And you'll probably be going every 3, 4, 5 years. But if all 3 of your choices are like the absolute hardest to draw, well, expect to be frustrated because you're probably not going to draw but maybe once in your lifetime. So that's how to use this 3 choices. Hard to draw, kind of somewhat easier to draw, easiest to draw. Don't ever put something that's easier to draw as your first choice and something that's harder to draw as your second or third choice, because that quota of the hard to draw one's going to be filled. You're pretty much wasting your second and third choice if you go about it that way. So, New Mexico has a couple, well, let me get into this next thing. I told you that there are 6% of the tags that are provided to non-residents, non-guided non-residents. Well, there's another quirky rule in the New Mexico regulations that say, in order for New Mexico to round up to the next whole number, it has to exceed 0.75%, a 0.75. Whereas a lot of states, if you end up at 0.5, 1 point, let's use, you apply the percentage and you end up at 1.5. Well, some states round that down to 1, some round it up to 2. In New Mexico, in order for it to get rounded up to 2, it's got to be 1.75 or higher. So they broke out a ton of their hunt codes into shorter seasons with fewer tags, especially for pronghorn. A lot of them only have 10 tags, 10 tags, 10 tags. Well, under the old rule in New Mexico from 5 or 6 years ago, 10 times 6% is 0.6. It would have got rounded up to 1 tag. It doesn't now. It gets rounded down to 0. So in your head, you got to be thinking about this. What's the number of tags that needs to be available so that 6% gives you a number above 0.75? Well, it needs 13 tags. So any hunt code that does not have at 13 or more tags has 0 non-resident self-guided tags available. So don't burn one of your choices on one of those hunt codes that only has 10 tags. You have a 0 statistical chance of drawing because there's not a tag. So, New Mexico has some special hunts they carve out for youth and mobility impaired. They are the best youth hunts and the best mobility impaired hunts in the entire West. Hands down, no question. They end up having a lot of high demand for those now because they're such good hunts. I'll use the elk ones as an example. They give you these youth and mobility impaired hunts in some of their best units, in some of their best elk hunting dates that first week of October. So if you have a youth, if you have somebody who's mobility impaired, be thinking about New Mexico. It's a sweet spot for that. One of the strategies New Mexico has is how do we get as many people out in the woods as possible without impacting the resource? How they do that is really short season dates. So the first archery season, I think, and we're not in the peak rut. I think it goes September 1st through the 14th or through the 15th. So yeah, you get a longer period, but it's not much rutting activity, so it's a harder hunt. And then when the rut starts picking up, they shorten that season, I think September 15th to the 24th. So that's a shorter season. And then you get into the muzzleloader and firearm seasons for elk. Those are all 5-day seasons. What do? They're getting a lot of people to get tags, but you get really short windows to go and hunt. With pronghorn, some of those seasons are only 3-day seasons. So pay attention to the season dates, because if you draw, you're gonna have to have your plan dialed in for that short window of time. And then, is there a place to hunt? New Mexico has 22 million acres of BLM and Forest Service to hunt. Understand that some of it is, got travel management plans, so there's some restrictions there. They have a ton of state trust land, these little powder blue sections on your map. You can hunt them, but you cannot camp on them. And you can scout them 14 days prior to your season opening. Now, very often some conflicts happen there because unfortunately I've run into it. There's been some state land where it's been locked. It's like, wait a second, that's public land. I hope you don't run into that. Just know that if it's state trust land, the little powder blue stuff on your map, you can hunt that. New Mexico is the home of the landowner tag, the transferable landowner tag. They give away more landowner tags than I think pretty much any state. And that's a big issue of contention. Also, a lot of their deer, you don't even need to draw a tag, you just arrange with a landowner. It's called private land only. And now, most of the pronghorn hunting, you have to make an arrangement with the private landowner, and that's how you get your tag, rather than through a draw. It's really weird. And a lot of that has changed in the last 5 or 6 years. Maybe the deer part changed maybe 10 years ago. I think the pronghorn stuff changed 4 or 5 years ago. But it's a lot different than other states for deer and pronghorn. So those are the things you need to know. Remember the deadline of March 20th. Remember to use your 3 choices wisely. Allocate your budget, because there's no sense in you throwing a bunch of money into things that maybe they're not your highest priority, and because that money's tied up, it causes you to not apply for your highest priority. But if you have the money and you can do New Mexico, it's a great state. There's unbelievable hunting in New Mexico. There's a lot of places to go and hunt. And if you want more detail, go to gohunt.com. Their strategy article is going to be up here any day, and it is worth it. And when you sign up at Go Hunt, use promo code Randy. They'll put $50 of credit in the gear shop. And 2024, our goal for you is this is the year that you draw a tag that you want. Thanks for watching. Good luck.